So I think one of the most interesting things is what does it say about
But you don't think much of the Arab League, do you?
No, I think it was a very sinister move from the main countries in the EU to bring in, some sort of Arab contribution, which is highly tokenistic and surely disingenuous. I mean, there are talks now that Qatar might be involved. What does Qatar have to say about freedom of speech, about human rights, for instance?
No,
what does Qatar have to say about the nature of the regime?
I don't disagree with any of that, and I do think any military participation will be strictly token. But I do think it's politically significant that the Arab League publicly said we want to, and for reasons of self-interest. I absolutely agree.
So it doesn't appear as to be yet another war against the Christian West and the Muslim Arab world. And that's the main reason.
No, but there's more than that. There's a self-interest for the Arab regimes as well, not because of Libya, but more because of Egypt, which was significant, highly significant.
There are two reasons. There are two reasons here. If Gaddafi is perhaps loved by some African leaders, he's been giving a lot of money around in the African continents, so much, dishing it at the AU meetings and so on. He's really hated within the Arab leadership community.
There is no bolt hole for him in any
They're
of the
not
Arab...
friends
no,
of his. They're not friends. And he himself, he has stated many times before that, look, he tried to get, a unity and lead it in terms of Arab League. He failed. Now he's coming to Africa. But so there's that hatred. But I think that in terms of the West, there are two things. Again, they hate the man so much. He needs to go. But this is an oil country. We can't run away from that.
That's what I was going to ask you about, Nabila. I mean, so what would you say, who are the rebels exactly, and what are the West's interests? And you've talked about a sinister kind of interference, but what would you do? I mean, would you just let this play out? Because it did look, did it not, up to 48 hours ago, as if Gaddafi's, what he said about what he was going to do in Benghazi was chilling, wasn't it? Go from house to house if you've got a gun, that's...
Absolutely. That sounded like major act of retaliation, completely, and I agree with that. But I think we should take him literally now. He's calling for a UN fact-finding mission to come to Libya to find out exactly if he's killing civilians. Well, let's do that. Let's go and send observers on the ground. Let's go and find who is killing who. Let's not forget that he's dealing with an armed, rebellion. So we've heard that a plane has been brought down a few hours ago. Well, it turned out it's not a plane, a Gaddafi plane, it's a rebel plane. So we're not sure, we're hearing that there is military action going on still now, but we don't know who's
I think the only problem here is that Gaddafi should not be given, in a certain way. I can understand what you're talking about in terms of, we need to do the right thing, he's calling for this and that. That must not overshadow the fact that this guy is bad to his people. He's a great dictator, and therefore,
he's also a great poker player.
In a certain way, I will not cry any tears if anybody bombs him or if he has to go. He should go.
No, but I mean, Nabila was making the point that you might not be bombing him, you might be bombing other people because
absolutely.
That is true. That is why perhaps
I think we all agree.
Personally, I would say the best way out of this is tomorrow Gaddafi wakes up and he says to the world, I want to negotiate my way out.
But Nabila, you've met him. That doesn't seem like
so. That it is.
He wants to hang on. He will play one side off against the other.
Well, he's very comfortable in the role that we put him in. The hard man pariah who's defying the West.
He's comfortable in that.
And we've placed him straight back in this position.
See, that is a problem, isn't it? Because in the end, he is there, and the French forces, the American forces, and the British forces are somewhere else and don't want to put boots on the ground. He's got at least half the country, probably more, and he just needs to sit tight, presumably.
Well, yes. I mean, I think the kind of scenario that Vincent is envisioning is one probably where his sons come to him and say, we got to get out of here. We don't want to go down with you, and basically try to talk him out of it. But all this is very wishful thinking at this point.
And he's got nowhere to go. I mean,
I don't think it can be wishful thinking.
Saudi Arabia,
when Mubarak went, it was
Saudis don't love him either.
When Mubarak went, it was more to do with their family interests, to save themselves, their life, their property and everything. And I think that one thing is, no,
I think it was
the thing is, we must not
speech.
underestimate how these so-called very tough, powerful dictators like Libyan Gaddafi, how cowardly they can be when it reaches them and their own lives and their own property and so on. I can tell you, we can all be shocked. One of these days, because he either has to wait now and there will be a big war, and then he will end up like Saddam Hussein.
I mean, the missing piece, the crucial piece, and I think what those who are behind this, to the extent they've thought it through, are counting on, is not even his sons, but it's the military, it's the security forces, and there is a broad or some similarity to Egypt. I mean, one of the reasons Mubarak went is that this national institution, the army, clearly had enough and was not going to support him. Yeah. Now, it's a little bit more complicated. In Libya, there are far less people. It's all the population is kind of squeezed on this littoral strip. There is this history of tribal division between West and East. But that part of the equation is absolutely the same, that if you can spook and scare enough of the people around him who do have to make this kind of slightly more gray decision, do I go down with Gaddafi or do I save myself? But that's what they hope. Now,
by the way, I think this discussion shows exactly why Obama took his time.
Yeah. Because he's hearing
this is
a more elegant version
is complicated. Of this. Exactly.
More elegant. But then
there's nothing cowardly about what Gaddafi is doing at the moment. If anything, he's proving that he's very smart and he's well advised. I mean, that ceasefire move was very, very clever because it basically diffuses the whole foundation of the whole legitimacy of the UN resolution.
Because it's very. But just to broaden this out, Yemen and Bahrain, we talked about. So what should happen there? Because as you suggested,
well, for a start, there are US allies, and there's no oil in Yemen, so the choice is very straight.
I think the people rising up in Bahrain are not the friends of America. First of all, they are Shia, they are related, they are sort of linked to Iran. Iran is encouraging them to rise up.
But they're friends of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And that's,
Bahrain is scary, I think. You're talking about, it's a very small place, but the Saudis consider it their province, and Iran wants it to be theirs.
Oh, yeah.
So that is immediately a geopolitical issue. It's not as much as domestic politics.
And within the Gulf Cooperation Council says people are saying it's Iranian mischief makers who's going.
But having said that, even if this is religious and ethnicities and so on, they could still be genuinely, many of them, looking for democracy. The young people that are demonstrating in Bahrain, Yemen, and so on.
Of course,
so it is a problem that the international community and the West is ignoring that.
I don't think they're ignoring it. I think again they
have
don't
anything to do
quite
with
know
that
what to
situation
do.
because they may not be what we want.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Ned, you're saying they're not ignoring it, they just don't know what to do.
I don't think they quite know what to do with places like Bahrain. And I think to a certain extent you're right. It depends on whether they're, quote, friends or not. For instance, there were rumblings in the last few weeks or last few days, rather, of demonstrations and people possibly being killed in Syria.
Yeah,
that's a little
more
easier
of that today,
for
actually. We've
Washington.
heard more of that today.
Because regime change in Syria, I think, would be an easier thing for the West to contemplate than regime change in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and not because one is more democratic or less democratic than the other, but this old kind of sense of do you need a stable kind of geopolitical set of players?